So imagine for a second that you have basically dedicated your entire life to mastering the most complex, the most sacred, and frankly, the most mystifying texts in human history.
Right, a total dedication.
Yeah, exactly. You're the ultimate insider. You are, the guardian of the Orthodox tradition, the person that everyone in society looks to for the fundamental rules of how the universe literally
The
works.
absolute authority.
The authority, yes. And then, in secret, you invent a philosophical system that just declares every single thing you have just dedicated your life to is complete and utter nonsense.
I mean, it is the ultimate intellectual betrayal. Or perhaps, I guess, depending on how you view the nature of truth, the ultimate intellectual evolution.
Yeah, it's wild. Welcome to this deep dive where we are examining a historical narrative full of just the most surprising contradictions you can possibly imagine.
Oh, absolutely.
Today, our mission is to explore the structural genius of the ancient Indian texts known as the Vedangas. And we're going to examine the biography, the achievements, and the wildly dramatic mythology of this ultimate divine teacher, Brihaspati.
Right.
And then we are going to unravel a massive historical plot twist involving a radical, ancient, atheistic ideology known as Charvaka.
And for you listening, it is really crucial to understand that this is not just dusty ancient history. What we're exploring today is really a masterclass in how humanity has, always wrestled with information overload.
Yeah, definitely.
It's about the very nature of truth, the definition of reality, and that eternal tension between deeply held Orthodox faith and, well, radical empirical skepticism. I mean, the fierce arguments happening in ancient India are the exact same arguments we have today about science, religion, and how we actually know what we claim to know.
Exactly. So the journey we've mapped out goes from the absolute height of religious orthodoxy all the way down to the ground floor of materialist atheism. And bizarrely, the exact same mythological mastermind might be responsible for both.
Which is just a crazy concept.
It really is. So we need to start with the foundation. The Vedas. Now, according to the sources, Vedic literature is split into two massive categories. You have Shruti, which literally means revealed literature.
Right.
This is the material supposedly heard directly from the cosmos by ancient sages. The Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, and Atharva Veda.
The cosmic downloads, basically.
Exactly, the cosmic downloads. And then you have Smriti, which translates to memorize literature. Our focus today really starts in that second category, the Smriti, specifically with a set of disciplines called the Vedangas. So what was happening historically that made these texts necessary?
Well, to understand why the Vedangas exist, you have to look at a massive historical crisis.
Okay.
The term Vedanga translates to limbs of the Veda, and there are 6 of them. These disciplines really started to take shape during the Iron Age in India, roughly the mid-1st millennium BCE, and they emerged out of absolute existential necessity.
What was going wrong?
Well, the original language of the Vedic texts, which were composed centuries earlier, had grown completely archaic. People were losing the precise meaning, the exact pronunciation, the geometry of the rituals.
Oh, wow. I can imagine that if Shruti is supposed to be this perfect, revealed cosmic truth, you really cannot just have local priests mispronouncing the words or, forgetting the steps to a ritual.
No, absolutely.
The system was essentially breaking down due to time.
Precisely. It was like trying to read Beowulf in the original Old English today without a dictionary, but while believing that reading it incorrectly might actually unravel the fabric of the universe.
That is a terrifying amount of pressure.
It is. So the Vedangas were developed as auxiliary disciplines to support, preserve, and protect the Vedas. They're the scaffolding that keeps the ancient structure from collapsing. And the texts use this brilliant, really profound analogy of the human body to explain how these 6 separate disciplines function as a unified whole.
I love that.
Yeah, just like the limbs of a body, they perform supportive and augmenting functions for the Veda Purusha, which is the personification of the Vedas.
I really appreciate a good biological metaphor because it grounds incredibly dense material into something we can all visualize. Let's build this body.
Let's build it. First, we have the feet or the legs of the Veda, which is Chanda or meter.
Okay, the legs.
Right. Chanda provides the foundation, the rhythm, the set number of syllables per verse. It's what allows the text to move, to kind of walk out into the world.
That makes sense.
But it goes deeper than just keeping a beat. The ancient texts argue that Chanda takes the mind from the dry, rigid structure of language and drops it into the waves of deep aesthetics. It transforms a basic spoken chant into a resonant rhythm that aligns with cosmic harmony.
Wow.
It's described as the linkage between the lower world of physical manifestation and the upper world of spiritual liberation.
So the legs give you movement and rhythm, but you cannot just have rhythm, right? You need to actually do something in the physical world.
Exactly. Which brings us to the hands, which is kalpa. Kalpa deals with ritual. The hands are what you use to manipulate the world to do the work. Kalpa is the manual for action.
So it's the instruction manual.
Yes. It tells you exactly how a ritual should be performed, what specific materials must be used, how many priests are required, and crucially, the geometry of the space.
Geometry.
Yeah, there are different types of Kalpa Sutras. You have the Frauda Sutras for the massive, complex public sacrifices, the Griya Sutras for domestic household rites, the Dharma Sutras for societal laws, and the Shulba Sutras, which are just fascinating.
What are those?
They are basically the ancient, highly advanced geometry used to precisely measure and construct the fire altars.
That makes sense. The legs are the meter, the hands are the physical ritual and the geometry. But a action means nothing if you perform it blindly or, at the wrong time.
Which is exactly why we need the eyes. That's Jyotisha.
Jyotisha.
Jyotisha is the discipline of astronomy and astrology. The eyes allow you to see the cosmos, to meticulously track the movements of the planets and stars.
Right, because of timing.
Exactly. This was an absolute requirement for timing. The rituals detailed in Kalpa had to be performed at highly specific, mathematically calculated auspicious times that aligned perfectly with celestial movements.
So if you miss the window...
Without Jyotisha, the Veda is entirely blind to the timing of the universe. A ritual performed at the wrong cosmic hour was considered useless or, honestly, even dangerous.
Okay, so we have the movement, the action, and the sight. Where does comprehension come in? Because if a language is decaying, as we established earlier, you really need to understand what you're saying.
And that is where we get the ears of the Veda, which is Nirukta.
Nirukta.
Nirukta is the discipline of etymology. It's a specialized ancient dictionary. The most famous compilation was by a sage named Yaska. But it doesn't just define a word. Nirukta explains why a particular word is used in a specific context and traces it back to its absolute root.
Oh, so deep context.
Yes. The reasoning is that without understanding the deep historical roots of the words, you cannot truly hear the meaning of the text. As Yaska himself argued, without etymology, the precise meaning of the Vedic stanzas simply cannot be grasped. You're just making noises.
Just empty sounds. That leads us perfectly to the actual production of those noises. The nose, which is siksha, and the face, vyakarana.
Yes.
I really want to spend some time here because the philosophy behind how they've used sound and grammar is entirely different from how we think about it today. We think of phonetics as just make sure you emphasize the right vowel so people understand you. But the sources describe siksha, phonetics, as something profoundly metaphysical.
Oh, it is far more profound than simple pronunciation. In this tradition, sound is not just a wave traveling through the air. Sound is considered a thermodynamic property.
A thermodynamic property.
Yes. It is the basis of an inner fire, a psychic and spiritual fire called Agni that needs to be kindled through intense concentration and rigorous discipline. Siksha absolutely covers the phonetic rules, the syllables, vowels, consonants, the precise quantity of breath, the stress. But the ultimate goal is not external communication, it's internal transformation.
I am kind of stuck on this idea of sound as a thermodynamic property. How does physically pronouncing a syllable correctly create a psychic fire? Like, what is the actual mechanism happening in the practitioner's mind according to these texts?
The sources describe a very specific process. The practice of Sikya takes a practitioner through 4 distinct stages of language, moving from the physical to the transcendent.
Okay, what's the first stage?
It starts with Vaikhari, which is the external spoken language. The texts compare Vaikhari to a pitcher or a beaker holding the sound. It's just the vessel.
Just the container.
Right. But through perfect pronunciation, the sound moves inward to the second stage, Matima, which is the intermediate internal thought. You are internalizing the vibration.
So you are feeling the resonance inside your own head, moving from spoken word to pure thought.
Exactly. Then it moves deeper to the third stage, Pashanti. At this level, the sources describe the sound as becoming a vast, luminescent, visible living system.
Visible?
Yes. They use the imagery of a rainbow of many hues. Sound becomes something you perceive holistically within your consciousness.
That is beautiful.
And finally, if the discipline is perfect, the sound reaches the fourth stage, para, which is the transcendent, the infinite, the unmanifest. By pronouncing the syllables perfectly and walking this internal path, the aspirant achieves a state of powerful suction or rapture called samadhi.
Oh, wow.
This is the ultimate goal of yoga, the microcosmic self unifying with the macrocosmic universe, entirely driven by the physics of perfect sound.
That completely changes how I look at chanting. It is not a performance for an audience or even a prayer to a deity in the sky. It is literally an internal engine.
An engine, yeah.
Perfect pronunciation is a vehicle for enlightenment. And the rules for that pronunciation, the underlying architecture that holds this entire thermodynamic system together, that's Vyakarana, the face of the Veda.
Yes. Vyakarana is the rigorous study of grammar, roots, and suffixes. And the absolute pinnacle of this discipline is the work of the sage Panini in his massive 8-chapter treatise, the Ashtadehi.
Okay.
The origin story of Panini's grammar highlights just how divine they considered this structure to be. The legend goes that at the end of his cosmic dance, Lord Shiva Nataraja clicked his hand drum, his damaru, 14 times.
14 drum beats.
Right. Sage Panini witnessed this dance through divine meditative vision, and from those precise 14 drum beats, he formulated the foundational grammar sutras, the Mahasvara Sutras.
So the grammar isn't something humans invented to communicate better. It is literally the fundamental grammar of the cosmos, dictated by the rhythm of Shiva's drum.
And because of that, they took this grammar incredibly seriously. In the massive commentary on Panini's work, the Mahabhashya, written by sage Patanjali, he lists 5 essential purposes for studying grammar.
What are they?
They are raksha, which is the absolute protection of the Vedas.
Oh.
The ability to modify mantras to suit specific changing contexts. Agama, the inherent scriptural duty to study.
Yeah.
Laghu, the brilliant ease of learning words through a system of rules rather than memorizing millions of individual forms.
Right, rules over rote memorization.
Exactly. And finally, asandeha, which translates to the absence of ambiguity.
Let's really examine asandeha because the sources provided an incredibly specific practical example of why grammar prevents ambiguity, and it involves a sacrificial cow.
Ah, yes, the famous Stula Prashadi example. This perfectly illustrates why grammar was not just an academic exercise, but a matter of cosmic importance.
Okay, lay it out for us.
In a certain sacrificial ritual, the text instructs the presiding priest to offer a cow described by the compound word Stula Prashadi. Now, without advanced grammar, you have a massive, potentially catastrophic problem.
Because it's ambiguous.
Exactly. Does that compound word mean a cow that is both stout and spotted? Or does it mean a cow that has big stout spots on it?
I want to translate this into a modern equivalent so we can really feel the stakes here. It's like the difference between saying, I need a hot dog, meaning a canine that is currently overheating, versus I need a hot dog, meaning the food in a bun.
Yes.
It's the exact same letters, the exact same words, but if you put the verbal stress on the wrong syllable, you end up bringing the gods a sausage instead of a living animal, or vice versa. If you are the priest and you botch this, the sacrifice fails.
That is a perfect analogy. And a non-grammarian has absolutely no way of knowing the difference. But a master of Vyakarana knows they must listen to the svara, the accent or tone of the word.
Ah, the tone.
If the accent falls on the first member of the compound word, the grammar dictates it is a specific structure called a bahuvri compound, meaning having big spots. But if the accent falls on the final syllable, it is a tatpurusha compound, meaning the cow itself must be stout and spotted. Grammar is the only thing that solves the mystery and guarantees the ritual functions as designed.
So if the Vedas are like an ancient mystical operating system for the universe, the Vedangas, the meter, the ritual geometry, the astronomy, the etymology, the physics of sound, and the cosmic grammar, they are the code maintenance, the firewall, and the ultimate user manual all rolled into one.
That's a great way to put it.
They're designed to keep a wildly complex system running flawlessly for millennia without a single corrupted file.
The sources themselves recognize this complexity. They describe the Vedangas as having 5 essential structural features: interdependence, interconnectivity, decentralization, cyclic essence, and multiplicity, resonating to a backdrop of unity.
That's a lot of interconnected parts.
They use the metaphor of an ancient tree. The roots are buried deep in the foundational culture, but the branches reach outward, ramifying and diverging, operating very much like a modern neural network or a dendrogram in information sciences. The Vedangas connect the ancient seed of culture to the full branching complexity of human evolution.
But here is the problem. To master a system this overwhelmingly complex, the advanced math of the altars, the astronomy of the planets, the thermodynamic physics of phonetics, all perfectly integrated human beings could not just figure this out alone.
No, it's too much.
A system this rigorous requires a terrifying level of intellect to actually conceptualize and teach. Who was the architect of this orthodoxy? This brings us to a figure who is essentially the Einstein of the gods, Brihaspati.
We move from the anatomy of knowledge to the literal personification of wisdom itself.
Let's introduce Devguru Brihaspati. He is a major Hindu god and a revered sage. His lineage is serious cosmic royalty. He's the son of Rishi Angiras, who is a mind-born son of Lord Brahma, the creator of the universe.
And his entry into the universe was fraught with drama from the very beginning.
Oh yeah, tell that story.
The texts say his mother, Shraddha, was unfaithful during her pregnancy, which resulted in a tragic stillbirth. She repented deeply and prayed to Rishi Angiras, who forgave her and actually infused his own life force into the lifeless baby. That resurrected child grew up to be the unparalleled intellectual giant, Brihaspati.
What does he look like? If we're visualizing this divine teacher, he's not just an old man with a book, right?
Not at all. The iconography is majestic and very specific. He is described as having golden or yellow skin, projecting an aura of absolute purity. He rides an incredible chariot drawn by 8 white horses.
That's quite the entrance.
Right. He has 4 arms, holding a stick or rod of authority to represent his role as a teacher and disciplinarian, a lotus flower, a rosary of beads for recitation, and sometimes a water vessel or a container of soma, the divine elixir of the gods. In some regional depictions, he is accompanied by a tamed tiger, representing mastery over primal nature.
And astrologically, as we learned in Jyotisha, he is a massive deal.
Yes, in the discipline of Jyotisha, Brihaspati is synonymous with the planet Jupiter. He is the most benevolent, auspicious planet in the Navagraha, the 9 planetary deities.
So he's Jupiter.
Yes. He represents wisdom, immense growth, prosperity, and spirituality. He is associated with the color yellow, the yellow sapphire gemstone called Pukraj, and Thursday is literally named after him, Brihaspatiwara.
Wait, Thursday?
Yeah, it's fascinating that even the Greco-Roman calendar dedicates Thursday to Jupiter, Thursday, Jupiter's day, Brihaspatiwara. The archetypal connections across cultures are just staggering.
That is so cool. The titles bestowed upon him show just how important he is to this system. He's Brahmanaspati, the lord of prayers, Vachaspati, the lord of speech. He is the ultimate guru, the preceptor to all the devas, the gods.
The master tactician.
Right.
Yeah.
If the gods have a geopolitical or military plan against the Asuras, the demons, it did not come from a warrior god. It came from the mind of Brihaspati.
But his life was far from peaceful meditation in an ashram. It was characterized by intense cosmic drama and political instability. For instance, the infamous story of his wife Tara, the goddess of the stars. She was abducted by Chandra, the moon god.
And Chandra was supposed to be a student, or at least a subordinate within the cosmic hierarchy. It's a massive betrayal and a huge scandal.
A catastrophic scandal.
Yeah.
Chandra became completely infatuated with Tara and forcibly took her. Brihaspati was obviously deeply distressed, but the geopolitical stakes were raised when Chandra sought military protection from Brihaspati's ultimate rival, Shukracharya, the preceptor of the demons.
Oh, wow. So it escalated quickly.
The gods and demons were suddenly on the brink of absolute war over this subduction. It took the direct intervention of Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva to negotiate Tara's return. But by the time she was returned to Brihaspati, she was pregnant.
Oh, no.
Yeah, she gave birth to a highly intelligent son, Buddha, who represents the planet Mercury.
The family tree of the cosmos is incredibly complicated, but this incident highlights this legendary rivalry you mentioned, Brihaspati versus Shukracharya, the teacher of the gods versus the teacher of the demons.
Exactly.
It's an intellectual and magical arms race, and Shukracharya had a massive tactical advantage that was turning the tide of the cosmic wars, right?
He possessed the ultimate secret weapon. Shukracharya was the sole master of the Marita Sanjivani Vidya. This was an incredibly powerful magical knowledge, a specific incantation that had the power to revive the dead.
So infinite respawns for the demons.
Yes. So in the endless cosmic wars between the Devas and the Asuras, the gods were losing a war of attrition. Every time they managed to kill a demon on the battlefield, Shukracharya would simply use the Vidya and bring them back to life. The demons were practically invincible.
So Brihaspati, being the mastermind tactician, realizes he cannot win this with brute force. He needs an espionage plot.
Exactly. It's a brilliant but highly dangerous and morally complex tactical move. Brihaspati decides to send his own son, Kacha, deep into enemy territory.
His own son.
Yes. Kacha is instructed to present himself as an eager student to Shukracharya, to serve him devotedly for years, and somehow, through proximity and patience, steal the secret of the Mrita Sanjivani Vidya.
But the demons are not stupid. They immediately figure out who Kacha is and what he's trying to do.
They do. And the reality of Kacha's mission is grotesque and harrowing. The demons repeatedly murder Katya in brutal ways to protect the secret.
Repeatedly.
Yes, but there is a massive complication to it comes. Shukracharya's daughter, Devayani, falls madly in love with Katya.
Of course she does.
So every single time the demons murder Katya, at one point they even grind him up and mix him into Shukracharya's wine. Devayani begs her father to bring him back.
Oh my goodness.
And Shukracharya, bound by his daughter's love, uses the very resurrection spell Katya's trying to steal to revive him. This happens multiple times. Finally, through sheer devotion, immense self-control, and by brilliantly manipulating these impossible circumstances, Katya manages to learn the spell and successfully brings it back to the gods, equalizing the arms race.
What fascinates me about this story is what it says about Brihaspati's character. When we look at him, he is revered for his purity, his religious instruction, his absolute mastery of the sacred Vedangas. But when the cosmic chips are down, he operates with a terrifying level of political pragmatism.
He really does.
He literally sends his own son into a meat grinder, knowing he will be repeatedly murdered just to protect the cosmic order.
It forces us to reevaluate our definition of wisdom. Brihaspati embodies the profound idea that true wisdom isn't just passive meditation or theoretical knowledge of grammar and altars. It is active. It is fiercely tactical.
Right.
To protect Dharma, the cosmic order, sometimes requires ruthless pragmatic survival skills. He is a statesman and a spy master just as much as he is a priest. He represents the absolute pinnacle of orthodox, divine, spiritual wisdom, a perspective the ancient Indian tradition calls astika.
Right. Astika, the orthodox belief in the authority of the Vedas, the existence of the soul, the reality of the gods, the cycle of karma. Brihaspati is the undisputed poster boy for Astika.
Yes, he is.
Which finally brings us to the most mind-bending part of this entire deep dive. Because according to ancient texts, specifically the Siddha Dharma tradition, this exact same figure, the high priest of the gods, is credited with spawning a philosophical system that flips the entire universe upside down and sets it on fire.
Yes. The Siddha Dharma tradition claims that Guru Brihaspati is the author not only of the orthodox Astika texts, but also the founding father of the Gnostica school of thought. Gnostica means heterodox, atheistic, or fiercely materialist.
I really need to stop and question this. The guy who is the literal priest of the gods, who manages the geometry of the fire altars, who relies on Vedic rituals and magical resurrection spells to win wars, is credited with writing a text that says rituals are fake, heaven is a lie, and gods do not exist.
That is the claim.
That is logically incoherent. It's like the Pope secretly publishing a massive bestseller on militant atheism. Why would he possibly do that? Why burn down his own house?
It is a massive historical and philosophical paradox. The Siddha Dharma tradition attempts to explain it by stating that Brihaspati manifested into 12 entirely different forms or avatars, names like Lukya Brihaspati, Devguru Brihaspati, Arthagya Brihaspati, and so on. In his specific form as Lukya Brihaspati, his mission was to spread Laukika or Vijnana. This is a knowledge system incredibly akin to modern experimental science. It asserts that physical matter is the ultimate, only reality, and completely rejects the existence of a soul or anything existing beyond the physical senses.
Wow.
And the foundational text for the most famous, most radical materialist school in ancient India, the Charvaka school, is literally called the Brihaspati Sutras.
So how do modern historians actually reconcile this? Do scholars really believe the guru of the gods invented atheism?
There are two main theories to reconcile this contradiction. From a historical and secular perspective, many scholars suggest that the Brihaspati Sutras were named after him purely pseudonymously.
So it wasn't really him.
Right. Think about the cultural context. If you are an ancient philosopher putting forward radically subversive atheistic ideas that threaten the entire social order, attaching the name of the most revered intellectual in mythology, Brihaspati does two things.
It gives you...
Yes. It accords your highly controversial text instant, undeniable credibility, and it perhaps provides a layer of political protection against censorship.
So it's essentially ancient intellectual cover. You claim the smartest guy in the universe wrote it, so people are forced to at least read it.
Exactly. But there is also a fascinating mythological theory found in orthodox texts like the Vishnu Purana. This theory suggests that Brihaspati did indeed invent the atheistic materialist philosophy of Charvaka, but he did it intentionally as a weapon of psychological warfare.
Psychological warfare.
The idea is that he taught this seductive, materialistic philosophy specifically to the Asuras, the demons, to corrupt their minds, turn them away from the power of the Vedas, strip them of their spiritual merit, and ultimately make them easier for the gods to defeat in battle.
Ah, so even his atheism is just another tactical espionage move. That is brilliant. It fits perfectly with the guy who sent his son to steal the resurrection spell.
It really does align with his character.
But regardless of why his name is attached to it, or if it was a pseudonymous author, the philosophy itself, Charvaka, which is also known as Lokayata, meaning directed towards the world or the philosophy of the people, became a massive, undeniable intellectual force in ancient India around the 6th century BCE.
It certainly did. And to understand why this philosophy was so scandalous, yet so absolutely vital to ancient intellectual life, we have to look at exactly what the Charvakas believed. And that starts at the very foundation of their thought process, their epistemology. It starts with how they strictly define truth.
Let's examine the epistemology of Charvaka. For anyone unfamiliar, epistemology is just the philosophical study of how we know what we know, right? What is the criteria for a piece of information to be considered an absolute fact?
Correct. In ancient Indian philosophy, the valid accepted means of acquiring knowledge are called pramanas. And the different philosophical schools debated fiercely over how many pramanas existed.
Give me an example.
For example, the orthodox Advaita Vedanta school accepted up to 6 valid means of knowledge perception: inference, comparison, postulation, non-perception, and testimony. Testimony meaning trusting the word of a reliable expert or a sacred revealed text like the Vedas.
But the Charvakas looked at that list of 6 accepted methods and basically took a massive red pen to it.
They were aggressively, ruthlessly minimalist. The Charvakas accepted only one valid means of knowledge, pratyaksha, which translates to direct perception.
Just one.
Yes, their rule was simple. If you can see it, hear it, touch it, taste it, or smell it, or perceive it directly through the inner sense of the mind, then, and only then, is it real. If you cannot perceive it directly with your senses, you absolutely cannot claim it as a universal truth.
So right out of the gate, they completely threw out testimony. The idea that the ancient sages heard the Vedas from the cosmos meant absolutely nothing to them.
Nothing at all.
But what really shocked me is that they also completely threw out inference, which is called anumana. And this feels wild to me because inference is how humans do almost everything. We infer things constantly to survive.
Yes, the total rejection of inference as a source of absolute truth is the absolute cornerstone of their radical skepticism. To truly understand the mechanics of their argument, we have to examine the classic example used in almost every ancient Indian philosophical debate: the argument of the smoke and the fire.
Let's lay out the standard orthodox argument. It goes like this. If you look at a distant hill and you see smoke rising from it, you immediately infer that there is a fire on that hill.
Right.
Smoke is the middle term, fire is the major term. The universal rule is where there is smoke, there is fire. Therefore, fire exists on the hill, even if you can't see the flames.
And the Charvakas would look at that perfectly logical sequence and say, hold on, stop right there.
Yeah.
While it is statistically likely and often true that smoke means fire, it is not unconditionally true everywhere and at all times.
How do they figure?
And say, how do you know for absolute, undeniable certainty, without walking up that hill and perceiving the heat and the flames yourself, that the smoke isn't caused by something else entirely? Perhaps there are hidden variables or causes we cannot perceive from a distance.
I want to push back on this on behalf of the listener because it feels like they're just being annoying. If I am in my house and I see thick, black smoke billowing out of my kitchen 99.9% of the time, that is a fire. I am going to call the fire department.
Of course you are.
I am not going to sit in my living room and say, well, I haven't directly perceived the flames. Perhaps it's a hidden variable. You can't build a functioning society if you have to empirically verify every single fire before acting. Isn't this philosophy just being pedantic and difficult for the sake of it?
That is the exact criticism their rivals leveled against them.
Yeah.
But the Charvakas were very specific in their defense. They weren't saying you shouldn't act on probabilities in your daily life. If you see smoke, sure, assume it's a fire and act accordingly. But what they were fiercely arguing against was using inference to build an absolute philosophical or religious system.
Oh, I see.
They argued that as long as the relationship between two phenomena hasn't been proven unconditionally, and we can never know all conditions because some might be hidden from us jumping to a conclusion via inference, is always prone to error. Truth arrived at by inference, they argued, is merely an accident of statistics.
Ah, so it's about the stakes of the argument.
Exactly. It might work for you in daily life to assume there's a fire in the kitchen, but you cannot use that same inductive logic to prove the existence of an invisible soul, or the cycle of karma, or the existence of a God you cannot see. You must acknowledge doubt when dealing with absolute truths.
It sounds like they were the ultimate ancient scientific peer review board. If an Orthodox priest brought them a complex theory about how performing a ritual geometrically perfectly would guarantee them a wealthy reincarnation in the next life, the Charvakas would just cross their arms and say, "Show me the data, let me perceive a reincarnation directly, or your theory is void."
If we connect this to the bigger picture of intellectual history, the sheer bravery and logical rigor of the Charvakas was astonishing. By demanding empirical direct proof for absolutely everything, they forced all the rival schools, the Buddhists, the Jains, the Orthodox Nyaya philosophers, to fiercely tighten their own logical arguments.
You couldn't just get away with lazy thinking anymore.
No, you could no longer just rely on sloppy reasoning, blind faith, or, because the guru said so, when the Charvakas were waiting in the public square to tear your argument apart. They acted as a philosophical whetstone, constantly sharpening the minds of everyone in ancient India.
And because they violently rejected anything that couldn't be directly perceived, their worldview was completely unapologetically materialistic. The sources say they outright rejected the Vedas, the very foundation we spent the first half of this deep dive exploring.
They threw it all out.
They called the sacred texts self-contradictory, tautological, and wrote that they were invented by stupid imposters. That's a brutal public takedown.
They rejected karma, rebirth, the existence of a soul, heaven, hell, and any notion of divine judgment. The text, Sarvasya Samgraha, states their position perfectly and bluntly. There is no world other than this. There is no heaven and no hell. The realm of Shiva and like regions are fabricated by stupid imposters.
Tell us how you really feel.
Right. They believed that what we call consciousness was not a magical soul, but simply an emergent property of physical matter coming together in the body, much like how mixing certain physical ingredients creates the intoxicating power of alcohol. When the physical body dies, the physical ingredients break down and consciousness permanently ends.
That is incredibly modern, and they completely rejected supernatural causes for natural phenomena, right? If a fire is hot, it's not because Agni, the fire god, blessed it with inner psychic energy.
No, not at all.
The ancient Charvaka texts say, "The fire is hot, the water cold, refreshing cool the breeze of morn. By whom came this variety? From their own nature was it born." It's just the inherent nature of matter reacting with matter. It's the birth of ancient physics and pure naturalism.
It is a purely naturalistic, staunchly anti-supernatural worldview, which raises a massive, vital question for human existence. If there's no heaven to strive for, no hell to fear, and absolutely no cosmic scorecard keeping track of your karma, how did the Charvakas believe you should actually live your daily life?
Yeah.
What are the ethics of a universe with no cosmic rule?
Well, according to the sources, the Charvaka ideology embraced hedonism. But it wasn't just mindless partying, it was a deeply practical, clear-eyed version of it. They believe that since the single physical life is all we have, pleasure is the only intrinsic, rational good in existence.
Yes. They looked at the extreme religious asceticism and austerities of their time. The Orthodox monks, starving themselves to near death, sleeping on beds of nails, completely rejecting the physical world and all its joys just to gain invisible spiritual merit for an afterlife they couldn't prove existed. And the Charvakas openly mocked it.
They thought it was a waste of a life.
Completely. They argued that avoiding the pleasure of this world just because it might occasionally bring some pain is completely foolish. They used a great metaphor.
Oh, was it?
They said it's like throwing away the entire grain just because it has a husk, or refusing to eat fish because it has bones. You accept the pain as an unavoidable byproduct of existence, but you fiercely pursue the joy.
There is this famous poetic quote attributed to them by their rivals, summarizing their ethics. "While life is yours, live joyously. None can escape death's searching eye. When once this frame of ours they burn, how shall it e'er again return?" It is a beautiful ancient plea to appreciate the present moment.
It is beautiful. But we have to be very careful here, because as we examine these quotes, we are entering into the great historical tragedy of the Charvaka history. By the 12th century CE, the Charvaka tradition essentially vanished.
John, complete that?
It died out completely. We have almost no original Charvaka texts left in existence. The famous Brihaspati Sutras are completely lost to time. The only way we actually know about these famous quotes, their ethics and their rigorous logical arguments, is through the writings of their bitter, orthodox philosophical rivals.
I noticed that in the sources, this is a massive historical red flag.
Yeah.
Learning about the Charvakas exclusively through the writings of Orthodox Hindu monks or Jain scholars is like, well, it's like trying to understand Batman exclusively by reading the Joker's diary. Of course, the Orthodox texts are going to paint them as selfish, immoral, and dangerously anti-religion.
It is the ultimate example of history being written by the victors. The 14th century text Sarvadarshana Sangraha, written by the Orthodox Advaita Vedanta philosopher Madhvacharya, is one of our primary historical sources on what the Charvakas supposedly believed.
And he didn't like them.
He intentionally paints them as shallow, materialistic egoists, completely devoid of morals. The Jain scholar Haripadra does something very similar in his texts. As modern readers, we have to view these hostile representations with extreme critical skepticism.
So if we read between the lines of these attack ads, we have to ask, were they truly immoral egoists just wanting to be selfish, or was something much deeper happening?
Many modern scholars argue strongly that the Charvakas were not immoral at all. They were simply early secular humanists or early empiricist scientists. Their ideas were existentially threatening to the established religious institutions.
Because of the power dynamics.
Think about it. The Orthodox priesthood relied entirely on the authority of the Vedas, the necessity of incredibly expensive, complex rituals, and the fear of the cycle of karma to maintain their immense wealth and social order.
Right.
The Charvakas were intentionally caricatured, and their views wildly exaggerated by those in power because they were a threat to that power. If you want to discredit an empiricist who demands actual evidence for your expensive rituals, the easiest tactic is to brand him a greedy, godless hedonist.
Wait, I am just realizing the societal implications of this. By saying don't trust testimony and karma isn't real, the Charvakas weren't just debating philosophy in a vacuum. They were essentially telling the public to defund the entire Orthodox priesthood.
Yes.
If the ritual doesn't actually guarantee a better next life, why am I paying a priest or herd of cows to perform it?
Exactly. They were challenging the entrenched economic and political power structures by dismantling the foundational epistemology that propped those structures up. By loudly declaring your divine testimony is not a valid source of truth, they were pulling the rug out from under the entire Orthodox establishment.
That's huge.
It was an intellectual revolution. And that is exactly why they were viewed as so incredibly dangerous, and very likely why their original texts were either intentionally destroyed or allowed to rot away uncopied.
This has been an absolutely unbelievable journey. Let's pull all of these massive concepts together for everyone listening. We began by exploring the rigid, incredibly complex, perfectly preserved structure of the Vedangas, the 6 interconnected disciplines designed to protect the cosmic code of the Vedas, ranging from the exact thermodynamic physics of phonetic syllables to the precise geometry of sacrificial altars.
We then examined the divine guru Brihaspati, the brilliant mastermind who understood and protected that immense orthodox structure. We saw him as the ultimate pragmatist, a tactician who would stop at nothing, not even sending his own flesh and blood into mortal, repeated danger to preserve the cosmic order against the demons.
And finally, we explored how that very same ancient culture and supposedly under the pen name or tactical disguise of that very same divine guru gave birth to Charvaka, a philosophical system designed with absolute laser precision to dismantle the entire orthodox structure piece by piece.
A total deconstruction.
A philosophy of radical, unyielding skepticism, demanding direct empirical proof, and begging humanity to look clearly at the material world right in front of them, instead of hoping for an invisible world beyond.
And this incredible journey shows us something deeply crucial about human intellectual history. True wisdom is not just about quietly absorbing information or blindly memorizing ancient texts.
No, definitely not.
The intellectual life of ancient India was incredibly dynamic, loud, and revolutionary. It was defined entirely by the fierce tension between rigid structure and radical skepticism. The ancient Indians were not just quiet religious mystics meditating on mountains. They were fierce debaters, uncompromising skeptics, and early scientists wrestling with the exact same fundamental questions about evidence, reality, and authority that we struggle with today.
It truly makes you look at the entire concept of a guru or a teacher entirely differently, which leaves us with a lingering thought for you to mull over as you go about your day. We look at Brihaspati, the ultimate undisputed teacher of the gods. What if the greatest, most profound act of a true guru isn't just to painstakingly teach you all the sacred rules, but to eventually give you the rigorous intellectual tools to completely deconstruct those rules, to question absolutely everything you have been told, and to finally have the courage to think entirely for yourself?